The cheapest watch on this list costs $75. The most expensive costs $1,450,000. Both of them do exactly the same thing. Press a button and a hand starts moving. Press it again and it stops. That is a chronograph. What separates those two prices is not the function. It is every decision made in pursuit of executing that function as perfectly as possible. The movement architecture, the finishing quality, the materials, the engineering ambition, and eventually the cultural weight that accumulates when a watch becomes something the world agrees is extraordinary. Most people never get past level 2. The ones who do describe the experience of seeing level 6 or 7 in person as the moment they understood what watchmaking actually is. 7 levels, 21 references. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which level you are at and what it would take to reach the next one. Level 1. The chronograph everyone can own. $50 to $300. This is where most people first discover what a chronograph actually is. Not from reading about it, but from pressing the button on their wrist and watching the hand move. That moment, at any price, is the same moment. These 3 watches deliver it for less than the cost of a restaurant dinner for 2. Alright, tell me in the comments what your favorite watch is. I read every single one. And if you're enjoying this, don't forget to like and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel and I appreciate every one of you who does. The Casio Edifice EFR 539BK. Around $75. Casio built the Edifice line for one purpose: deliver genuine tool watch specifications at a price that requires no justification. The EFR 539BK runs a quartz chronograph movement accurate to plus or minus 15 seconds per month, housed in a 43mm stainless steel case with 100-meter water resistance. The 3 sub-dial layout, elapsed minutes at 12, small seconds at 9, elapsed hours at 6, is the same configuration used by Swiss manufacturers charging 30 times this price. The difference is not the layout. It is the movement inside and the story attached to it. At $75, the Edifice charges for neither. It charges for the function, executed reliably, in a watch that looks considerably more expensive than it is. Casio's manufacturing scale, tens of millions of units, produces finishing quality at this price that no Swiss brand can approach. The pushers have a positive, crisp action. The bracelet does not rattle. The crown is appropriately resistant. For someone who wants to understand what a chronograph feels like on the wrist before committing to something serious, nothing at this price does the job more honestly. A point worth making directly. The quartz chronograph at level 1 is not inferior to the mechanical chronograph at level 2 in the dimension that matters most for a timing instrument. It is more accurate. A quartz movement at $75 measures elapsed time more precisely than a mechanical movement at $775. What the mechanical movement provides is not accuracy. It is a different experience entirely, one that the remaining 6 levels of this list exist to explore. The Seiko SSB031, around $150. The SSB031 exists in a specific and valuable position in the chronograph market. It looks like a racing chronograph from the 1960s. It functions like one, and it costs less than a tank of premium gasoline. The black dial, silver subdials, and tachymeter scale on the chapter ring reference the aesthetic of the vintage Seiko 6139. The automatic chronograph that Seiko introduced in 1969, the same year that Zenith's El Primero and the Heuer Breitling Hamilton Caliber 11 launched, making 1969 the most significant year in automatic chronograph history, and the Seiko 61391 of 3 simultaneous answers to the same mechanical question. The SSB031 is quartz rather than automatic, which is the honest compromise at this price. But the visual connection to that heritage is real, and the build quality reflects Seiko's manufacturing standard even at entry level. 100 meters of water resistance and a stainless steel case that wears larger than the price suggests. For a viewer who wants their first chronograph to have a story attached to it, the SSB031 delivers one. The Citizen Eco Drive, Chronograph AT2480, around $275. At the top of level 1, Citizen introduces the feature that justifies the premium over the 2 references below it: solar charging. The eco drive movement in the AT2480 charges from any light source, sunlight, office fluorescent, indoor ambient, and stores enough energy to run the watch for 6 months in complete darkness. This eliminates the specific inconvenience that makes quartz chronographs impractical as long-term ownership propositions. The battery replacement that eventually costs more than the watch did. The AT2480 delivers 100-meter water resistance, a genuine tachymeter function, and the eco-drive reliability that Citizen has documented since 1976, the year they introduced the world's first light-powered analog quartz watch. At $275, this is the first chronograph on this list where the ownership experience genuinely matches the purchase experience. The gap between Level 1 and Level 2 is not primarily about price. It is about what happens inside the case. Everything above this level is mechanical. Level 2. The first serious chronograph. $300 to $1,500. Level 2 introduces a split. The first reference is the finest solar chronograph available under $1,000, quartz precision pushed to its engineering limit. And the next two are the first fully mechanical chronographs on this list. A mechanical chronograph is a fundamentally more complex object than a quartz one. Not because it tells time better, but because the mechanism that measures elapsed time is driven by a mainspring rather than a battery, governed by a balance wheel rather than a crystal oscillator, and assembled by human hands from components that require tolerances measured in microns. These three references mark the boundary where the chronograph stops being purely functional and starts being something you choose for reasons that go beyond what the specifications say. The Seiko Prospex Speed Timer, SSC813 Solar, around $500. The SSC813 is Seiko's answer to the question of what happens when you apply genuine sports watch engineering to an accessible price point. Solar-powered like the Citizen above it, but with a movement architecture specifically developed for chronograph function. The V192 caliber delivers 1/5 second accuracy on the elapsed time display, a tachymeter bezel in addition to the chapter ring scale, and 200-meter ISO 6425 certified water resistance in a case that references the iconic Seiko 6139 racing chronograph of 1969. The dial layout is a bi-compax configuration, 2 subdials rather than 3, which produces a cleaner, more legible face than most chronographs at twice the price. For a buyer who wants a sports chronograph that functions as a serious diving or racing instrument, not merely as a timing complication on a dress watch, the SSC813 is the entry point. The Tissot T-Race Automatic Chronograph. Around $775. Tissot's T-Race is the reference that the watch press consistently recommends when asked for the most credible automatic chronograph under $1,000. And the reasoning is consistent. The ETA Valjoux 7753 movement inside it is the most proven automatic chronograph caliber in production. The 7753 has been manufactured in significant numbers since the 1970s, used by Swiss brands at prices from $500 to $5,000, and has accumulated a service record that makes its reliability essentially unquestioned in the collector community. Column wheel actuation produces a smooth, tactile push-piece feel that distinguishes it from less refined chronograph mechanisms. The T-Race case, 45mm, polished and brushed steel, 100-meter water resistance, is the most overtly sporty design on this list below the Tag Heuer level. For a buyer whose first mechanical chronograph needs to feel like a serious instrument rather than a refined object, the T-Race is the correct answer. The Hamilton Intramatic Auto Chronograph. Around $995. Hamilton's Intramatic positions itself at the opposite aesthetic pole from the T-Race while running a movement of comparable caliber, the Valjoux 7753 again, in a 40mm Panda dial case that references the mid-century Swiss chronographs that Hamilton produced for the American military and commercial aviation market in the 1960s. The result is a watch that the collector community describes consistently as the most convincing vintage-inspired chronograph available under $1,000. The pump-style pushers, the applied Arabic numerals, the prominent subsidiary seconds at 9. These are design elements that Swiss manufacturers charge 3 to 5 times this price to access. Hamilton's position within the Swatch Group gives it access to manufacturing infrastructure that supports genuine build quality at this price. A transparent note: both the T-Race and the Intramatic run the ETA Valjoux 7753 as their base caliber. The Hamilton costs $220 more than the Tissot for the same mechanical foundation. The premium pays for smaller case diameter, the vintage design language, and Hamilton's American heritage positioning that the T-Race's racing aesthetic does not offer. Neither choice is wrong. They are the same movement expressing two completely different watch philosophies. Level 2 delivers the mechanical heart. Level 3 delivers the in-house movement, the caliber that the brand designed, engineered, and manufactured themselves, rather than sourcing from a supplier. Level 3, the collector's entry point, $1,500 to $5,000. At this level, something changes in how a chronograph is evaluated. Below Level 3, the question is whether the watch functions correctly and looks appropriate for the price. At Level 3, the question becomes more specific. What is the movement, who made it, and what does its existence say about the brand's engineering capability? These three references answer that question differently and compellingly. The Seiko Prospex Speed Timer, SRQ-037 High Beat, around $1,600. The SRQ-037 is the chronograph that the Seiko community points to when asked to demonstrate that Japanese manufacture can match Swiss competitors at the same price tier. And the evidence is specific. The caliber 8R48 inside beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour, producing a seconds hand sweep smoother and more fluid than any standard beat movement at this price. The vertical clutch mechanism, the engineering detail that separates serious chronograph movements from entry-level ones, eliminates the jump that conventional horizontal clutch designs produce when the chronograph is started. The result is a seconds hand that begins from zero without hesitation, a characteristic that mechanical chronograph enthusiasts describe as the single most immediately satisfying functional difference between an entry-level and a serious chronograph mechanism. At $1,600, the SRQ-037 delivers vertical clutch, high beat frequency, and a fully in-house Seiko manufacture movement. The Swiss alternatives at this price do not offer all three simultaneously. The Mito Multifort Chronograph, around $2,600. Mito exists at a specific and valuable position in the Swiss watch market. A brand with genuine Swiss manufacture heritage, the Multifort was introduced in 1934 as one of the first anti-magnetic and shock-resistant watches that prices its current production below the marketing premium that more recognized Swiss names attach to equivalent specifications. The Multifort chronograph runs the ETA A05.H31 caliber, a column wheel automatic chronograph movement with 80 hours of power reserve, a specification that most Swiss chronographs at 2 to 3 times this price do not match. The bi-compax dial in a 42mm case references the 1937 Multichrono with sufficient fidelity to qualify as a genuine heritage reissue rather than a marketing exercise. For a buyer who values Swiss manufacture heritage and is willing to look past brand recognition in favor of specification per dollar, the Multifort is the most defensible chronograph purchase at its price point. The 80-hour power reserve specification deserves specific emphasis. Most Swiss automatic chronographs at $5,000 offer 45 to 50 hours. The Multifort's movement stores nearly twice that energy. A watch wound on Monday morning will run until Thursday evening without touching a winding crown. At $2,600, that specification is not a bonus feature. It is the reason the watch earns its position here. The Tag Heuer Carrera Heuer 02, around $4,450. The Heuer 02 is the reference that re-established Tag Heuer's credibility with the collector community after a decade of questions about whether the brand's movements genuinely justified its pricing. The caliber Heuer 02 is fully in-house, designed and manufactured by Tag Heuer in La Chaux-de-Fonds, with a column wheel, vertical clutch, and 80 hours of power reserve in a flyback configuration. Flyback means the chronograph can be reset and restarted with a single push-piece press rather than requiring 3 sequential operations: stop, reset, start. The practical difference is that a lap timer using a flyback chronograph loses no time between measurements. The Carrera case, 42 millimeters, sapphire crystal, 100-meter water resistance, houses a movement that the watch press describes as Tag Heuer's most significant independent engineering achievement in decades. At $4,450, it is priced at the top of Level 3 and competes with Swiss alternatives at significantly higher prices on movement quality alone. Level 3 gives you the in-house movement. Level 4 gives you the movement attached to a name that changes how the watch is perceived in every room you enter. Level 4. The recognized instruments. $5,000 to $15,000. These three watches require no introduction to anyone who has spent time in the watch world. They are the references that define what a serious mechanical chronograph means to the global collector community. Each for a different reason, each with a different argument for why its price is justified. The Tudor Black Bay Chrono. Around $5,800. Tudor's entry into the in-house chronograph market produced the Black Bay Chrono, with a movement credential that the watch press found difficult to dismiss. The MT5813 caliber, developed in collaboration with Breitling and based on the B01 architecture, COSC, certified to -4 to +6 seconds per day, with a column wheel and vertical clutch in a 41mm tool watch case with 100-meter water resistance. At $5,800, the Black Bay Chrono delivers COSC certified manufacture movement performance, the certification that Rolex and Omega use to justify their premium positioning, from a brand whose name is on the back of the Rolex building in Geneva. The secondary market performance confirms what the specifications imply. The Black Bay Chrono holds 80 to 90% of retail value, outperforming most Swiss alternatives at twice its price. For the buyer entering Level 4 for the first time, Tudor is where the justification is clearest. The Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch Professional, around $7,400. On July 20, 1969, Neil Armstrong left his Speedmaster aboard the Eagle lunar module to serve as a backup timer after the module's onboard electronic clock malfunctioned. A decision that meant the first human footstep on the moon was taken by a man without a watch. Buzz Aldrin wore his on the surface. That specific watch, not this production model, but the caliber 321 ancestor this reference descends from, was worn on the moon. The caliber 3861 inside the current Moonwatch Professional is a manually wound column wheel chronograph movement metas certified to the most demanding in-production testing standard in Swiss watchmaking. Anti-magnetic to 15,000 Gauss, accurate to 0 to +5 seconds per day, tested in the cased watch rather than the movement alone. The Hesalite crystal on the standard reference is not sapphire. This is a deliberate preservation of the original specification that NASA certified the watch in 1965. For a buyer who wants a chronograph whose history is not a marketing story but a documented record of actual use in the most demanding environment in human history, the Speedmaster is the answer that no other watch on this list can provide. The Breitling Navitimer B0142, around $8,750. In 1952, Breitling developed the Navitimer for the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, a chronograph with a circular slide rule bezel that allowed pilots to calculate fuel consumption, rate of climb, airspeed, and distance without electronics. The Navitimer was a precision instrument before it was a luxury object, worn by BOAC and Swissair pilots in actual cockpits for actual navigation. The current B0142 houses Breitling's fully in-house Caliber B01, a column wheel chronograph movement with 70 hours of power reserve, COSC certified, produced entirely within Breitling's manufacture in La Chaux-de-Fonds. The 42mm case is the most legible modern interpretation of the original Navitimer proportions, and the circular slide rule bezel retains full functionality for the aviation calculations it was designed to perform. At $8,750, the B0142 is the chronograph where genuine aviation heritage, in-house movement engineering, and aesthetic identity converge most completely at this price tier. Level 4 gives you a chronograph with a story. Level 5 gives you the chronograph that every other manufacturer on Earth uses as the benchmark for what their own watch should aspire to be. Level 5. The benchmark. $15,000 to $50,000. At level 5, the watches are no longer evaluated against each other. They are evaluated against everything. These three references occupy the price tier where the collector community has reached its most consistent verdicts, and where the secondary market data most clearly reflects what the world has decided these objects are worth. The Rolex Daytona 116-500LN, around $16,900 retail. The Rolex Caliber 4130 is the most significant in-house chronograph movement Rolex has ever produced. A column wheel, vertical clutch automatic with a 72-hour power reserve and accuracy certified to -2 to +2 seconds per day, the tightest specification in mass production chronograph manufacturing. The case is 40 mm in oyster steel with a Cerachrome black bezel whose tachymeter scale is filled with platinum rather than paint. A material choice that ensures the markings cannot fade regardless of UV exposure or physical contact. $16,900 is the retail price. The secondary market price is approximately $24,000. The waiting list at most authorized dealers is measured in years. The Daytona is not the most technically sophisticated chronograph at its price tier. It is the most desired. Those are different things, and in the watch market, desire produces the secondary market performance that makes the Daytona the most liquid chronograph investment available at any price below Patek Philippe. The Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Chronograph 26240 ST, around $34,000. Gerald Genta designed the Royal Oak in 1972 with an integrated bracelet, an exposed gasket, and octagonal bezel screws. Design elements that were deliberately industrial in a market that defined luxury through restraint. 50 years later, the Royal Oak is the most influential sports watch design in history, and the 26240 ST is its chronograph expression. The Caliber 4401, a fully in-house flyback automatic chronograph with 72 hours of power reserve in AP's 21st century interpretation of the original 41 mm integrated case. The flyback function means the chronograph resets and restarts with a single press, the same functionality as the Tag Heuer Carrera Heuer 02 at level 3, but here executed in a manufacturer that has been producing Royal Oak movements since the complication was first introduced in 1997. At $34,000, the 26240 ST commands a secondary market premium on Royal Oak references that reflects the design's cultural weight as much as its horological content. The Vacheron Constantin Overseas Chronograph, around $29,300. Vacheron Constantin is the world's oldest continuously operating watch manufacturer, founded in Geneva in 1755, never ceasing production in 270 years. The Overseas Chronograph carries that heritage in a contemporary integrated sports watch architecture that the collector community recognizes as the most elegant of the three Swiss integrated sports watch references. More refined than the Royal Oak, more complex than the Nautilus. The Caliber 5200 is a fully in-house automatic chronograph with a column wheel and peripheral rotor, beating at 28,800 vibrations per hour with a 52-hour power reserve. The peripheral rotor, which winds from the movement's outer edge rather than through its center, allows the dial to remain unobstructed and creates a visual clarity that center rotor automatics cannot achieve. The interchangeable strap system allows the Overseas to move between steel bracelet, rubber, and leather in under 60 seconds. At $29,300, the Overseas Chronograph is the entry point into a name that has not interrupted its own story since before the American Revolution. To understand what that means concretely, Vacheron Constantin was founded in 1755. The American Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776, 21 years later. Every Swiss watchmaking tradition that the collector community values as heritage, Vacheron preceded. The Overseas Chronograph at this price is not just a watch. It is a title deed to the oldest continuously operating manufacturer in Swiss watchmaking history. Level 5 is where the market establishes what a chronograph is worth. Level 6 is where the market stops being the primary reference. Level 6. The Haute horlogerie chronograph. $50,000 to $200,000. At level 6, the watch is no longer evaluated primarily by what the market says it is worth. It is evaluated by what it reveals about the state-of-the-art in mechanical chronograph engineering. These three references are the answers to the question of what a chronograph becomes when the manufacturer removes cost as a constraint. The F.P. Journe Centigraphe Souverain. Around $75,000. François-Paul Journe founded his manufacture in Geneva in 1999 with a single purpose: produce movements that no other watchmaker had produced, using solutions that no other watchmaker had developed. The Centigraphe Souverain is the specific chronograph that demonstrates what that ambition produces. The movement measures elapsed time to 1/100th of a second, the centigraph function, using a dedicated gear train separate from the timekeeping train, driven by an independent power source. This separation means that activating the chronograph draws no energy from the going train, eliminating the positional variation that conventional chronograph mechanisms introduce when the complication is engaged. The result is that the Centigraphe Souverain is more accurate when the chronograph is running than when it is stopped, the inverse of how conventional chronograph movements behave. At $75,000, this is the least expensive watch on this list, produced by a manufacturer whose owner personally finishes movements by hand and whose production numbers are measured in hundreds per year. The Patek Philippe 5172G, around $95,000. Patek Philippe 5172G is the purest expression of what the Geneva manufacturer considers a chronograph to be. A manually wound caliber, CH29-535 PS, in a white gold case measuring 41 mm, with a column wheel visible through the caseback's sapphire crystal, a movement finished to the Patek Philippe seal, an internal standard more demanding than the Geneva hallmark, and a blue varnished dial with gold, applied Arabic numerals that the watch press has described as the benchmark for chronograph dial artistry at any price. The movement requires 9 months of production time per unit. The case demands 20 separate polishing operations to achieve the transition between brushed and mirror surfaces that the Patek standard requires. At $95,000, the 5172G is not the most complicated chronograph at level 6. It is the most resolved, the reference where every decision has been made in service of what a chronograph dial and movement should look like when nothing has been compromised. The A. Lange and Sona triple split. Around $180,000. A. Lange and Sona re-established the German watchmaking tradition in Glashütte in 1994. The triple split is the reference that demonstrates how far that tradition has advanced in 30 years. A conventional rattrapante chronograph measures split times up to 60 seconds. The triple split measures split times up to 12 hours, a capability that no other mechanical chronograph in the world provides. The mechanism that achieves this required Lange's engineers to develop a double rattrapante with both a split seconds hand and a split minutes hand that can be independently arrested and released, tracking 2 simultaneous elapsed times over intervals measured not in seconds but in hours. The movement, Calibre L 133.1, is fully in-house, finished to Lange's German standard of straight-grained plates, polished steel screws, and blued hands produced by heat treatment. 100 pieces per series, available exclusively through Lange boutiques. At $180,000, the triple split is the most functionally ambitious chronograph available at this price tier. The watch that the collector community cites when asked what mechanical chronograph engineering has achieved that quartz cannot approach. Level 6 removes cost as a constraint. Level 7 removes scarcity as an assumption. Level 7. The summit. $200,000 and above. These 3 watches are not purchased, they are acquired, through relationships built over years of documented purchase history with manufacturer representatives, through auction houses where bidding opens above 6 figures, through waiting lists measured not in months, but in the willingness of a manufacturer to recognize a buyer as someone worthy of allocation. All 3 references at level 7 are Patek Philippe. This is not an editorial choice. It is a statement about where the chronograph complication reaches its highest documented expression. No other manufacturer in production currently offers 3 distinct chronograph architectures at this price tier with the finishing standard, movement quality, and secondary market validation that Patek Philippe delivers simultaneously. The Patek Philippe 5204G split seconds chronograph, around $225,000. The split seconds chronograph, the rattrapante, is the complication that watchmakers consider the most mechanically demanding of all chronograph complications. A conventional chronograph has 1 second's hand that measures elapsed time. A split seconds chronograph has two: a primary hand that measures elapsed time continuously, and a secondary hand that can be stopped independently to record an intermediate time while the primary continues running. Pressing the split pusher again releases the secondary hand, which catches up to the primary instantaneously. The mechanism that achieves this, a Haute cam, a split seconds lever, a coupling spring, requires tolerances that Patek Philippe describes as among the most demanding in their entire production. The caliber CHR 29-535 PS in the 5204G is manually wound, column wheel actuated, and finished to the Patek Philippe seal in a 40mm white gold case. $225,000 for the most demanding chronograph complication, executed by the manufacturer that the entire industry considers the standard. The Patek Philippe 5270P Chronograph Perpetual Calendar, around $250,000. The 5270P is where Patek Philippe combines the two complications they have developed most comprehensively across their history, the chronograph and the perpetual calendar, in a single, manually wound movement. The Calibre CH 29-535P SQ tracks date, day, month, leap year cycle, and moon phase with no manual adjustment required until the year 2100, combined with the same column wheel chronograph mechanism as the 5172G at level 6. 278 additional components separate the 5172G's pure chronograph from the 5270P's combined architecture. The platinum case holds a gray-blue dial where the calendar displays at 12, 3, and 6, the chronograph subdials at 3 and 9, and the moon phase at 6 are arranged with a legibility that the complication's complexity does not normally permit. 187 years of Patek Philippe learning about chronograph and calendar mechanics applied simultaneously. At $250,000, the 5270P asks whether you believe the two most important complications in watchmaking history belong together. Every collector who owns one answers yes. The Patek Philippe 5208R minute repeater. Chronograph Perpetual Calendar, around $1,450,000. There is no watch on this list, and few watches in the world, that represents a greater concentration of mechanical watchmaking knowledge in a single object. The 5208R combines three complications that each require their own dedicated movement architecture. The minute repeater, which strikes the time acoustically on demand through a hammer and gong system requiring hundreds of precisely calibrated components. The chronograph, a mono-pusher configuration in which a single pusher at 2 o'clock controls the start, stop, and reset sequence, a design choice that simplifies the external case while concentrating the complication's complexity entirely within the movement, and the instantaneous perpetual calendar, which advances all calendar indications simultaneously at midnight rather than gradually over several hours. The movement, Calibre RCH27P-SQI, was developed over years specifically for this reference and cannot be found in any other Patek Philippe production model. 42 mm in rose gold, 550 parts, one price, $1,450,000. At this level, the question of whether a chronograph deserves this price is the wrong question. The correct question is whether a mechanical object of this complexity has ever been produced more beautifully. The collector community that has held one says no. The chronograph has been manufactured for 208 years, from Moynet's 1816 pocket instrument to the 550-part Patek Philippe movement that strikes the time acoustically while simultaneously measuring it to 1/5 of a second. In that span, the function has not changed. What has changed is the depth to which human ingenuity has pursued the question of what measuring time correctly actually requires. 7 levels, 21 watches, the same function, press a button, and a hand starts moving. Executed at every price point the watch world has ever produced. What separates $75 from $1,450,000 is not the button or the hand. It is the accumulated consequence of every decision made between the idea of measuring time and the object that measures it. Every level on this list is the correct answer for a specific buyer. Now you know which level is yours. And if you found yourself stopping at a specific reference, pausing on the Speedmaster's lunar history, or the Daytona's waiting list, or the 5208R's 7-figure price tag, that pause is the answer. The chronograph you keep thinking about after this video ends is the one you should understand first. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, drop a like and let me know your thoughts in the comments. And I'd genuinely love to hear what kind of topics you'd like to see next, so leave that in the comments too. I read every single one.